following is a project of our nonprofit newsroom. Support Midcoast Morning and local community-centered journalism today by signing up to be a monthly sustaining donor at chly.ca/donate. It doesn't take much money to support local news.
Hello and welcome to Midcoast Morning. I'm Joe Pugh. There's a by-election this weekend to decide on a new school board trustee. Two candidates are running to fill the vacancy left by former School District 68 board chair Charlene Mckay, who resigned in May. On Saturday, September 14th, from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., you can vote at the McGirr Elementary Gym, the Laydsmith Secondary Gym, the Cedar Secondary Gym, and at the District Administration Center on Wakesiah Avenue. There's also a special voting day Thursday from 3 to 7 at the Gabriola Elementary School Gym, and on Friday at the District Administration Center on Wakesiah Ave. On today's program, we'll hear from the two people looking to become school board trustees.
Good morning. Antapa Kwikkamawit Tanitsa Nanaimo. Good morning, everyone. My name is Joan Brown from Nanaimo First Nation.
Well, thank you very much for being here and making the time to speak with me. Maybe to begin, what made you decide to run for school board trustee?
Yep, thank you. For sure that education has always been a high priority for our community, our leadership, the elders. And I've been really fortunate to work with the school district in the past 5 years with the senior management leadership as one of the knowledge keepers, and just really overwhelmed in their commitment about thinking about things differently, and certainly would be honored to continue and grow that discussion from that leadership table.
And as you mentioned there, you've done some work with the school district before from your role as Chief Administrative Officer of Nanaimo. How would that role be impacted if you were elected to be a school board trustee as well?
Yeah, and it's just to continue to grow that model, that way of being, and just I've had that opportunity, like I said, but we're not done. We've just started, so you have to build on the momentum and the successes that the school district has achieved in the past few years. So that's really important to how can you implement things to a higher level when we think about the co-governance model of our school. Quamquams to Lakewood. We're fortunate that it's on reserve, but the school district manages it. So it's been really a real powerful partnership, and it's a model that we believe that would benefit other schools. And just thinking about the complexity of the issues for our young people, we really need to do things differently, produce stronger outcomes. Partnerships like us, SFN, and the school district that creates those opportunities. There's just so much that we've done in the past, in terms of food security, environmental. I worked in the environmental committee. Those are really important topics of discussion, and a high priority, not just for Nanaimo or Nanaimo, but just far-reaching, Joe.
So the plan would be to stay on, and you'd be able to do both roles if you were to be elected?
Oh, sorry. Yes, of course. Absolutely. It's all part of, like, when you think about education, it's part of a larger system. So it touches every aspect of our way of being. So that's why a chief administrative officer and this particular role will go hand in hand. Is
there one maybe really specific measure or change or something that you'd try to push for in the board's policy that you'd hope to have accomplished at the end of your tenure if you were elected?
Yeah, for me, what I really committed to is a strength-based approach, and making sure everything's integrated. I recognize, of course, that academic success is important, but you have to develop the whole person. You think about, these are the future leaders, and you really want them to be all that they can be. So that means dealing with the whole person and not just the intellect. So I think that's what's really critical. And we think about, the level of poverty, housing crisis, what the kids are dealing with. I can't imagine what their thoughts are. And we really want them to get out of a survival mode into a place of really starting to thrive to think about a way, how can I start helping? How can I change things in the world? And I think that's key. And we're not going to get there unless we develop the whole person. So that's what really has been our focus.
And how do you do that with the tools that you're sort of granted as school board trustees? You know, there's the Ministry of Education is sort of above, maybe setting like this is the curriculum. There are only certain things you can do. Like, what are the ways you achieve that?
So working directly with the principals, vice principals, and the teachers in terms of not only the policy development, but creating that space and the freedom. Like, for example, it's a requirement for Indigenous 101. So how do you implement that way it's really meaningful and lasting? It's really going beyond the surface. So it's working directly with them and really understanding the needs that they have or requiring to implement those kinds of curriculum that are really new to the school district. So I think that's really important, but it's really on the being with the policies, the procedures, and the supports that are in place. What are the staffing requirements? That's where school board trustees could really help prioritizing things. And one of the most important things, of course, is infrastructure. How do you put that forward? Because without infrastructure, you can't even offer the programming and the supports that are required. And really telling the ministry and asking them to understand that if you really want to affect change, you got to start investing into communities and the children. And this is a good starting point, because it's really, I think it's obvious to everyone that we really need to update our schools.
Are there any specific points on that front you'd like to bring to people's attention? I imagine as a school board trustee, your job would involve both advocating for just more funding, either in general or for specific projects, but also maybe making what could be difficult decisions about how to allocate that funding for infrastructure. What are some of you think the priorities?
Well, I think, for example, so infrastructure, of course, like NDSS is really, really, it's really needed for a new facility. But really, at the end of the day, what we're hoping to do is to focus our efforts. Like, you have to really align because there's such great need out of there. So just to your point of how do you determine what you're not going to do, at the end of the day is how do you strengthen it and have kind of a sequence of events that's really going to produce strong outcomes. It can't be random. It has to be aligned with of course, the strat plan and so on and so forth, but ultimately based on the foundation of the community needs, strengths, and, just their priorities. And so that's what we're responding to, because we really are ultimately the voice of the people. So they're the ones that know where those priorities are. So that's the magic, is really understanding the community needs and strengths and making sure your efforts are focused and aligned, going in that direction.
I also wanted to ask, so this is a by-election. It's happening this Saturday. In May, former trustee Charlene Mckay, who stepped down, was quoted in the Nanaimo News Bulletin by Carl Yu as saying that she found the work environment to be exceptionally unprofessional, and that her experiences included targeted passive-aggressive innuendo in meetings, as well as harassment, amateurish email communications, and a work environment fraught with outbursts. I'm just wondering, maybe if you saw those comments, what you make of them, and how you approach the idea of stepping into this role, potentially replacing someone who's told the media about experiences like that.
Yeah, and I certainly have the deepest respect for Charlene Mckay. I've worked with her for several years, and the situation I couldn't speak to, and what she's experienced or what that story is. And I would want to make sure from my perspective is that understanding that our roles and responsibility and having the children in the middle of the room at all times and any of those kinds of level of conversation is certainly something that doesn't belong at that table. That I'm a very listening to the elders and really guiding that every word, every breath has to really be positive and focused, because the children are there. We're there to help the children, and anything that is removed from that is going to be a problem and shouldn't live at that table. That's what I say these are really sacred moments when that circle closes to really try to be a help to so many. And there's such great need out of there, Joe, we all know. And it just takes time, and it takes all of us. It can't be one person. It can't be one organization. We really have to move beyond what's happening there at the table. And the biggest part of that is being professional, committed, and really caring to each other. That's really key to find the best solutions, the best path forward for everyone.
Is there anything else you'd like to let people know about your candidacy or what you would bring to the role if elected?
Thank you, Joe. What's important to me is really what I hope people would consider is that in my lived experience, my strength has been finding partners who are willing to take a collaborative approach. And as I mentioned earlier, that it's going to take all of us to affect real change. No one organization can do it on their own. And I've done that with BC Housing, the school district, and others, and really trying to find a model that really affects positive change, changing the outcome in so many ways. And just from an ancestral lens, if we don't work together, nothing will ever change. And that's what I bring, is that integrated, collaborative voice that's really key to anything that we touch.
Joan Brown is running for school board trustee in a by-election that's being held this Saturday in School District 68.
Midcoast Morning is made possible by the Community Radio Fund of Canada's Radio Meters program and listeners like you. Support Midcoast Morning and CHLY's nonprofit newsroom today by becoming a sustaining donor at chly.ca/donate. Local news can't survive without your support. Another way to help us out is to share this show with your friends and tell them why they should support us. Finally, if you're listening to the podcast edition of Midcoast Morning, go and give us a positive review on Apple Podcasts or whatever podcast feed you use. It helps people find us.
Today on the program, we're hearing from the candidates running for school board trustee in a by-election that's being held this Saturday. On the first half, we heard from Nanaimo CAO Joan Brown. The other candidate in this week's by-election is Tim Harris.
My name is Tim Harris. I'm from Staminas First Nations. I'm currently working as a team lead at Kwamalaylam. I'm a program manager for a program called Step Up, is where we help kids in care as they age out of foster care or out of care. So it's a program. I have a team under me that goes out and does individual work with the kids that are in care with us. So on our caseload. So we help them with we help our youth with life skills and independence. So we basically try to get them on their 2 feet, basically, is what we do. So, yeah. So, as mentioned, I'm from Ladysmith, Staminas First Nations, and I'm born and raised in the Ladysmith area. And, I got a big family, daughter and son. My daughter is the second year right now of her child and youth care degree, and my son just graduated with his child and youth care degree. So my wife and my son both work here at Kwamalaylam at our agency running programs. So.
Well, thank you very much for making some time to speak with me. Maybe to kick things off, what made you decide to run for school board trustee?
Well, yeah, it seemed like a pretty good fit, to be honest. My background of education and leadership is kind of what drove me to do this work. And so I started off my education career as an EA, as an education assistant. And then I did that for a few years. And from there, going into my teaching degree and becoming a classroom teacher. So I did that for 7 or so years. And then from there, becoming a leader of a school, so a school principal, and then ultimately getting my master's in educational leadership at VIU. So that's kind of what drove me. I think I come with a lot of passion. I always feel that education has sort of found me rather than I found education. I think a lot of people have wanted me to be a part of education. I think it's the way I carry myself, the compassion I feel for our youth. Before I started education, I was a youth supervisor at a youth center for our nation. So that's kind of what kicked it off. And so that's kind of what brought me in. And then having 17 years of elected council member experience with my nation of Staminas First Nation, that really helps. So knowing some of the policies and the processes and having some passion around some of the things that we have control of fixing within our nation, and seeing some of the changes and me being a part of that's really helped me to choose this, because I feel I could be an asset to the school board trustee with the education experience that I do have.
What do you think are maybe the priorities that the school board needs to pursue?
Yeah, I've talked to a lot of people, talked to parents and teachers within the district, and some of the priorities that I'm seeing and hearing is that the student supports in the classroom. When you have differentiated learning that's happening in the classroom, teachers have a difficult time, obviously, of being able to teach at all levels when the students' levels are all over the place within the classroom. So I think having more supports in the classroom to help alleviate some of that stress that the teachers would carry, I think that really would be beneficial. So student supports in the classroom is always a big one. It always has been there, and probably ever since even I was going to school. So I think student supports is a big one. I always talked about the idea of mental health supports as well. You're seeing the homeless situation. You're seeing a lot of the drugs and all these kind of different things, and the increase in suicide and the trauma that our youth are facing. For me, I think mental health supports. When I was a school principal, I had two counselors coming into my school rotating every day. So it was really important to address mental health supports. And I don't think social media helps that in any way, shape, or form. So the other thing I'm really passionate about is the idea around informal assessments for classroom teachers. So them knowing where their students are at when it comes to literacy, numeracy, social emotional behavior, and attendance. I think those are some of the assessments that we can address, and knowing that data, even at the board level, I think would be beneficial for the board to be aware of that, aware of that data. I think that sometimes could guide some of the decisions that we do make at the board level. And so it's also the long-term and short-term planning is important to looking at the strategic plan. I think that's obviously important to know where you're going, for future, whether it's short or long-term. I think you always have to be planned and always have to be ready. We do know that there's some aging schools within the district, so that could be a challenge as well. And it is posing a challenge right now to many of the schools within the district right now. So there are aging schools. I talked about this before in a circle, and there's a beautiful school in Langford. It's up on a hill. It's a really nice elementary school. And I was like, well, looking at, say, a school like the Laydsmith Intermediate School, which is it's a quite aging school, looks like pretty similar to when I went there when I was a child. So that says something, right? So we do have to look after our facilities, and I think it helps our kid learn, when they're in a really nice school. I think it's those things will, new technology and all these kind of different things will really help students. So hopefully
And if you're elected, how would your job as a trustee mesh with your current professional work? Would you be able to keep them both up, and how do they sort of fit together?
Yeah, I would say that they do. They do. I'm still working with youth. When I started my job here at Quilmot Lalem as a step-up team lead, I had a meeting pretty much immediately with my supervisors and them asking me can you help and assist? I know that you have the expertise in education, you have the experience. Is there anything that you could do to help with student success for kids and the kids in care success? Sorry, it was really low. The student success was very low within the three districts, District 79, District 68, and 69, which is Qualicum. So I got in there and I started helping and assisting with the district principals to look at the data. We created our own data, and we created red, yellow, green. We kind of put that on each student to share, to kind of give us that immediate look of where they sat within the school. And, if they're red, what does red mean? Could be that list I was talking about: numeracy, literacy, attendance, behavior, those types of things. And then after that, it's like, okay, what are we going to do? What are the caregivers going to do? What's the school going to do to support them? What is Quilmot Lalem going to do? And the caregivers, what could we do? So we were supporting our students with getting Chromebooks. We support them with tutoring and those types of things. So I think my job, it wouldn't really hinder what I'm doing at the board level. If anything, it could help and support knowing those kids in care, because that's kids in care. We have First Nations, and then we have First Nations kids in care, and they're a little bit lower on the totem pole, basically, around their success level, So I think that's the one big thing that we really have to pay attention to as a board. So
I also wanted to ask, so this is a by-election to fill a vacant seat. In May, former trustee Charlene Mckay was quoted in an article in the Nanaimo News Bulletin by Carl Yu as saying that she found the work environment to be exceptionally unprofessional, and that her experiences included targeted passive-aggressive innuendo in meetings, as well as harassment, amateurish email communications. I'm just wondering if you maybe are aware of that in the media, and what you make of it as, something you are potentially heading into.
Yeah, I've given that some thought, and, start asking some questions. What does it look like? What was that all about, basically, and that type of thing. So for me, it's, I think about myself and what I can control, and how my demeanor around, and my professionalism around all this, and my expectations of myself and probably my team. I think I would have some success in that area, because I think that's just the way I carry myself. And I feel like it's not going to be an issue for me at that board. I know a couple of them, a couple of the current board of trustees. I'm going to be leaning on them a little bit just for some of the immediate supports. And again, hopefully, I know, I don't know Charlene very well, Mckay. I don't know her at all. And it's too bad that she had that experience at the board level. I just don't know enough about it, but I can control how I can contribute to a collaborative team sort of approach, So I'm going to try to just control what I do and what I bring to the table. And try to just carry myself how I carried myself as a school principal, and how I carried myself as a elected council member for my nation. So really rolling up my sleeves, doing my homework, pushing myself every day to be better and to understand and be prepared and planned.
Is there anything else you'd like to let people know about your candidacy or what you would bring to the role?
Just the other reason why I did run is because I did find the time. I do feel like I have the time to be there. I have the will to be at the board level as well, and I also have the passion for it. Education is as a passion, just seeing some of the big decisions that we can make at the board level. It really gets me excited. It really does get me excited to be there and represent all families of the district. I know I'm First Nations. It's, and people may think I'm just going to be there just for First Nations peoples, but for me, no, I'm thinking about everybody as a whole in the community. I think we, as a board, I can ensure the success for all at the, all staff, all principals, all students, all caregivers. And that's what I intend to do, is to be there for everybody. And we know that there are low graduation rates for First Nations across BC and across Canada. We know that. So that's something that most districts are tackling. So we won't be any different of trying to close that gap a little bit. So
Tim Harris is running for school board trustee. If you're 18 or older and have lived within the boundaries of School District 68 for at least 30 days prior to the election, you can vote this Saturday at the McGirr Elementary Gym, the Laydsmith Secondary Gym, the Cedar Secondary Gym, or at the District Administration Center on Wakesiah. Voting runs from 8 to 8. That's our show for the day. Thank you for joining me. I'm Joe Pugh, host and producer of Midcoast Morning. Jesse Woodward is our executive producer, and RB Frew is our technical advisor. You can sign up for CHLY's newsletter at chly.ca/subscribe for updates from our nonprofit newsroom and more. Our theme song is First One by local Nanaimo band Waste Management. If you have a story you'd like us to cover, email us at news@chly.ca. That's all for now. I'll talk to you on another Midcoast Morning.
Midcoast Morning would not be possible without the funding of the Community Radio Fund of Canada's Radio Meters program and listeners like you. Midcoast Morning is a project of CHLY's nonprofit newsroom. Support nonprofit journalism in Nanaimo and on the Sailor Sea today by becoming a monthly sustaining donor at $5 or more per month. Support the program at chly.ca/donate. If you're already a supporter, record a voice memo telling others where you're listening from and why they too should support our work. After you're done, you can email it to us. Also, share the podcast with your friends. While Meta is blocking Canadian users from sharing news content on their Facebook feeds, you can still share our podcast directly with your friends via Facebook or Instagram Messenger. Finally, this program acknowledges and gives thanks to the Nanaimo First Nation as we broadcast and podcast from their traditional territory. Thanks for listening.